Oh hey, the Game of the Year Awards just came out. Nice, check this out. What difference does it make? The winner's just chosen by the editor of the site or the sponsors. It's all just bias or BS. No, check it out. These are community polls. You know, they set up actual polls for the last few weeks. That way they get an actual, honest community response. Oh, good. Fanboy popularity contests. I bet each one of them put a whole lot of thought into their pissing contests. Yeah, well, let's see. Fine, but just skip around to the big awards, alright? Which ones are those? Oh, that's simple. Just check the videos with the highest comment count. Those are always the ones with the most amount of trolls, haters, and crusaders.
Best Shooter. And the nominees are... Game with the biggest mass marketing flood. Their ads are goddamn everywhere. Game with the closest franchise carbon copy. You swear you're playing last year's model. Game that has more substance than a multiplayer mode. Who needs assholes online to have fun? Best RPG. And the nominees are... Most haters since Mass Effect 3. Because beating a dead horse is new.
Since Mass... What's that supposed to mean? Are they talking about all those fans who hated that game's ending or whatever? Well, it's been a while since a game has made so much ado about nothing. Besides, none of those people were actually fans. You see, the fans were the people who bought the game, you know, contributed to its 5 million units sold, and enjoyed it for all it had to offer, you know, good or bad or indifferent. The fans weren't the ones who bitched every step of the way. They weren't the ones who bitched about the Kai Lang prequel book. They weren't the ones who bitched about FemShep being canon. They weren't the ones who bitched about Shepard being optionally homosexual. They weren't the ones who bitched about Day 1 DLC. They weren't the ones who bitched about the multiplayer inclusion. And they weren't the ones who, you know, didn't buy into the hype and set them up to be embarrassingly disappointed at the end and create this huge uproar because they couldn't admit to themselves that they just can't let something minor go and just have fun with it. See, those people weren't the fans. They were just bitching.
Game that most closely resembles a good RPG from the 90s. Retro goggles on. Well-written game but suffers graphic or subgenre prejudice because it's okay to hate things that are different.
Subgenre prejudice. Well, yeah, it's just like how some people think JRPG is a real subgenre. It's really only kind of used by people who stick around the genre long enough to have these really meaningless, overclassified labels. You know, like in music, where you have like a white rap, or, you know, people who listen to so much dubstep they categorize dubstep. In this context, it's really more for people who dislike an RPG, whether or not it came from Japan or not, whether or not it was actually good or not. Ah, sounds like a complete waste of time.
Best Indie Game. And the nominees are... Overly pretentious game with a single gimmick. Because being cheap doesn't mean that it has to be cheap, even though it is. Game that's only kind of okay, but is evidence that games are art. Creating job satisfaction for critics everywhere. Graphical update to a game that came out on the Atari 2600. Now fooling the third generation of gamers going on. Least pitiful justification for buying an overpriced phone or tablet. Because at least I'm not paying $50 or $60 even though I have over $90 a month on my data plan. Community pick for the Game of the Year. And the nominees are... Horribly broken release with large fanboy bias. Because being popular means being right.
Well, who won this category before? Oh, they're talking about Skyrim. Hilariously broken game that had such strong fandom they were willing to look past all its broken flaws at release date and roll around in its boring general world, but somehow they take all that evidence and use it against any other open world RPG. You know, the same thing happened with another game a couple years ago It was that Diablo clone with guns. What was it? Borderlands? Ah, yes, that's it.
Personal favorite of the editor, so it makes the list. So that way all of us can keep our jobs. Game that came out just before the awards, so we don't accurately evaluate it. Because being on the honeymoon period is still good.
And that's kind of it. Oh, actually, that wasn't so bad. All the nominees were spot on. I know, right? Somehow every year it ends up being just like this.